Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Bookmas. Today I believe is day 7 now, so we are just past halfway through Bookmas and that is so crazy. It's almost Christmas. But this video I'm really excited for. It's going to be a fun little quick sit down video. I really want to talk about my top 10 favorite books from the year of 2024. The year we're in, duh. One of my favorite things about the end of the year is really reflecting back on my year of reading, and not only is it fun to like set a goal for your year and to try to complete that goal, but it's so fun to discover new reads, and it's so fun for all the releases that come out every year. That's one of my favorite things going into the new year, is all the releases coming out. So, and discovering your favorite books is the best. So I really want to go through the ones that I read that I think of as my top 10 reads of this year. Everyone's opinions on books is completely different. Some of these might seem a little crazy and some of them might make sense, but these are my personal favorites, ones that I absolutely had an amazing time reading. And I also think it does come down to just the time when you read it, the mood, the setting, like it comes down to a lot of things. So everyone's favorite book is very different and very subjective to themselves and to the time they read them and what they're going through. So I love seeing everyone's favorite books, and I'm sure a lot of these too will probably be on other people's favorites as well, and a lot of them are probably books you've heard a million things about and repeats. And so I'm sorry if this is boring just hearing about books you've already heard about, but I'm gonna go through them. I'm gonna go through them in order of oldest to newest, if that makes sense. I'm gonna go through the books that I started with, like my first couple books I read in January of this year, and then we'll go down to the books I've read maybe like this month. Yeah, I am super excited. The first one I really want to talk about is probably my most favorite book I read this year. I read it in January and I'm still thinking about it, so I had to put this in the top spot. I don't currently have a copy with me right now, so I will put it up on the screen for you, but that is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. This is not a shocker. I did read Throne of Glass last year and I ended up reading and finishing Kingdom of Ash in January of this year, and I absolutely loved that book. I know it's almost 1,000 pages, but I could read 1,000 more. It was absolutely perfect. There was no like missing plot. That was not boring at all. I enjoyed myself reading that, and it is still one of my favorite reading experiences ever. Obviously don't want to go into detail about what that book is about because it is the last book of an amazing 8-book series, so I really recommend you read them all. If you know, you know. I know a lot of people have read them before and it is absolutely amazing. The emotions you feel in that book are insane. You are attached to these characters, but you don't realize how attached you are until you get to that book. It is insane, to say the least. Like, oh my goodness, I can't get into it because I will start crying. But that book is amazing. I really want to do a reread since it's been almost a year since I've read that series. And so I really would love to go into 2025 with a reread. Kingdom of Ash is a 6-star read for me. I will think about that book for the rest of my life. I absolutely love it. So now we'll get into the books I actually have copies of. Next I would love to talk about is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. This one might shock you guys, but I read this one the beginning of this year, I think also in January, and this book shocked me. It was my first ever literary fiction. And the reason I picked it up is because I absolutely loved how short this book is. I heard a lot of good things about Gabrielle Zevin, so I figured that this was a good one for me to pick up because it's short, it's about a bookstore owner. I thought, what could go wrong? And a lot could go wrong, but in the best way possible. I read this in a 24-hour period. I could not stop reading it. It was so good, but it's also rip your heart out, so be very careful. I was bawling at like 6 a.m. in the morning reading this book, and I had no business waking up at 6 a.m. bawling and reading this book. And it's also a movie, which I would really like to watch, but if you don't know what this book is about, it is basically about a bookstore owner who, his bookstore is honestly not doing so well, and it's in this kind of small town. He's kind of a grumpy man, and he has this prized possession of Edgar Allan Poe poems that is worth a lot of money, and honestly it's what he's kind of banking on to retire and kind of just move on from this bookstore that is not doing so well. And the books end up getting stolen or missing. He doesn't really know, and he's really upset. He feels like his world is crashing down when all of a sudden he finds a little surprise in his bookstore that really changes his life for the better. It's so good. It's so sweet and wholesome. Like, this just, I think about this book a lot. I would really recommend reading this one. It's really not that much to commit to. I think it's barely over 200 pages. It's like 250 pages. Best 250 pages you'll ever read. I would seriously think about this book so much, and I really want to read more about Gabrielle Zevin's other books. The next one is no surprise. I'm just late to reading this book, honestly, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I don't know why it took me so long to read this one because it is a fan favorite for sure. My first ever book by her was actually People We Meet on Vacation, and then I read Happy Place, which I absolutely loved Happy Place, and then I finally picked up Beach Read back in February. I think I have a reading blog of me reading this book, but I loved this book. This was I picked this up in a time where I was trying to get into more romance books. I still was recovering from Kingdom of Ash, and it was hard to pick up any other fantasy books, so I was trying to try out some other genres, and I really enjoyed this one. I mean, I was on vacation, so the mood felt right. I just feel like there was so much more to it than a bubbly little romance. I loved the emotions in this book. This book is about two characters, January and Gus. January is moving into her late father's house. He had just recently passed away, and she finds out that he had a secret home with another lady that wasn't her mom. So he essentially was having an affair, and he had a secret house, and she is inheriting this house, and she's also finding out all these secrets about her father that really destroy her. She is also just really not in the best place. She's a writer, and she's not doing very good, and she ends up moving in next door to her rival author that she knew from college, Gus, and they both are having horrible writer's block, and they also kind of don't get along because they are rivals, and they decide that one day they decide that they're just going to switch genres and try to write the other person's genres in books and see who gets published first. And so it's kind of fun because it's a little bit competitive, but they also in the process grow closer to each other. So good. And like I said, I love more of the depth behind it. I love having a romance with a little bit more depth. I think that this is amazing. This was a 5-star read for me. The next book, which was a shocking surprise to me, was The Heartless Hunter. I have to think, because I know this is like I think this is what it's called in like the UK and everywhere else, but in the US it's called The Heartless Hunter, and I surprisingly liked this book. I don't know why I'm saying surprisingly, because it's fantasy, it's romance, it's perfect, but I really thought this was fun and different. Okay, first of all, let me just say I love the time period this is set in. It gives me like Bridgerton vibes, which I love Bridgerton. Like, I love the historical fiction. I really enjoyed that this fantasy was kind of set during that time. It's about the main character, Rune. She is a witch, and she comes from a family of witches, and they live in this society where witches are kind of hunted and killed because of their powers, and her grandmother actually was one of the witches that got caught and killed, and it was really sad for Rune. And so she is kind of on this mission to go out and save the witches before they're getting killed and take them away so that they are safe. So she is kind of like a hero to these witches, and she goes under the alias of the Crimson Moth. And then you have your main guy, Gideon, and he is actually like the #1 witch hunter. He is kind of put on this task to discover who the Crimson Moth is, because every time he captures a witch, they get rescued, and he is very frustrated about that. He is very suspicious of Rune, of being the Crimson Moth. She is kind of trying to get closer to him because she wants to learn more about where he's keeping witches. Kind of playing each other when really they both have their kind of own plans going on. He's trying to get close to her to learn if she's a witch. She's trying to get close to him to learn where he's keeping witches so she can rescue them. And then, of course, being that close in close quarters, a bubbly romance really does form, and it is so fun. This is the best book if you're wanting something that's like enemies to lovers to enemies. This is your book. And Rebel Witch, I think, is the next book that's coming out, and it comes out in next year, so that is something to look forward to. So if you haven't read this yet, now's the time in preparation for that book to come out, because I think it comes out, I want to say early spring. I could be wrong. The next book I read that I actually really enjoyed is Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and it's so funny that I picked this up because I haven't even read the original Chestnut Spring series yet. I have not read it, and I absolutely loved this book, and I still haven't read the original Chestnut Spring series. I haven't read the second one to this either. I'm kind of slow catching up with all my books I want to read. Loved this! I thought it was so cute. I thought this book was so silly too. I love the daughter in this book. This is about a guy who is a record producer, and he ends up going back home to Rose Hill to open up a little record studio just in the middle of nowhere in a small town where people can come and kind of record their music where it's quiet and not in the hustle bustle of the city. And he is also voted one of the hottest billionaires. And so he's quite famous. And next thing he knows, a girl comes to his doorstep. I think she's like 15 or 16 years old, and she claims to be his daughter. And so obviously that turns the whole world upside down. While he's navigating becoming this random new father to a teenager, his best friend's sister is in town, and she ends up picking up like a babysitting nanny gig for our main guy, and her relationship with the daughter is so cute as well, but kind of, you know, gets close from there. But I absolutely love this book. I loved the single dad trope. I think this is the first time I've ever read anything like that. It was so cute, and I absolutely love the daughter. I thought she was absolutely hilarious, and I love the relationship between her and the female main character. So this was definitely a really, really fun one. I do really want to pick up the next one. I do have it on my TBR cart here. This one kind of worries me because it's about a pop star, and that's, I don't know if I would, I haven't read anything like that, but I don't know if I would enjoy it. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this one. I mean, I'm going to read it regardless because I really liked this one, but I don't know. This one I'm a little bit more wary of, but I'm definitely excited to get into it. I also absolutely love the covers of these books. I think they are so pretty, and then the spines, the little mountainscape, so cute. But now I really need to read the Chestnut Spring series because I really think I also just love Elsie Silver's writing. I think that was a huge part of it too. It was just so bingeable and so easy to read. It was so fun. My next favorite book, I would say, is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is the one and only book I've ever read from Abby Jimenez, and I'm actually really sad about that. I absolutely ate this up, and I need to dive into more of her books, but she also has a new one coming out that I'm really excited for. This book is about two of the main characters, and they both have this curse where every time they date someone, the next person that person dates finds their true love. So they never end up being the one for these people that they are going out with. And the main girl is a nurse, and she finds this guy, the main guy on Reddit, and sees his story, and she's like, wow, that's really similar to my story. And they end up meeting. She talks to him on Reddit, and he's kind of wary of her because I guess there's a lot of press around his Reddit posts wanting to get interviews with him because of the situation he's been in, and so he's kind of wary of her, but she convinces him otherwise, and they start to meet up and they talk, and they come up with this plan where they're like, well, if we both have this curse, if we date each other, maybe we'll cancel out the curse and we can find our true loves. And so they go on this plan. They're like, okay, well, we're gonna start going on these dates. They like schedule dates, but it's never supposed to go anywhere. I loved their love style. Like, I thought he was just like the sweetest to her, and he did so much for her, and it was just so cute. This is definitely another 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed this one. The next book is a 6-star read for me, a lot like Kingdom of Ash. I think about this book so much, and that is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I read this so fast. This is considered like more of a magical realism. It has a romance subplot to it. This was so cute. I honestly, going into this book, had no idea what I was going to think of it. I had no expectations. This woman's aunt passes away and leaves her a apartment in New York, and she really doesn't want to go back to this apartment because she has a lot of memories with her aunt. She's really sad that her aunt passes away, but based on her financial situation, she's kind of forced to move into this apartment, and her aunt always told her this apartment had magical abilities where it could transport you 7 years in time, whether it's in the past or the future. And she's never really believed that. She's just like, oh, her aunt was just like so whimsical and had all of these fun little quirks, and that was one of her fun little stories she would tell. But when she moves into this apartment, she finds out another man is also living in this apartment, and she is very confused, to say the least, but he ends up being from 7 years in the past. And so while she is kind of going through life, she is struggling in life, struggling with her job. It is the sweetest story. I really loved the conversations of grief. Also just the story of her kind of working her life into this career, and then maybe feeling like she did all this, but it's maybe not for her, and she's not happy. So she's just going through a lot of things in this book, and so it felt a lot more to me like a bunch of life lessons, and I really connected with this book. I read it so quick, and I teared up a few times during this book because there is some heavy stuff in here. I loved her writing. It just encaptured me. I could not look away from the pages. So I need to read more of her books, but this was definitely a 6-star read for me. This will probably be buried with me as one of my favorite books. I am not even kidding. The next book I want to talk about, it's one of my favorite books, shockingly, is Starling House. This is different from any book I've ever read. I know I've been saying that about a lot of the books, but this is a book club book for my book club, and this book was really cool to me. I was just captured by how visual this was. I was reading it and I could picture every little thing, which sometimes is a little bit hard for me to do. This book follows this woman who she lives in a motel with her little brother. She's kind of taking care of him. She's pretty poor. She works at like a tractor supply store. And on her walk every day, she always passes by this house on this hill. It's like a really creepy house, and there's a lot of rumors about this house as well and the owner of the house. And she passes it every day, and the house has always been kind of calling to her. It's kind of weird. It gives me like Monster House vibes in the sense. And she dreams about the house. She dreams about going inside the house. It's just really eerie and weird. And so one day she ends up like going up to the gate, and the gate opens for her. She goes up to the door and she knocks, and no one goes near this house. Everyone is afraid of this house. And so the man that owns the house, he kind of inherited it from his family, answers the door really confused, obviously, because no one goes to the house. And he ends up offering her a job to be a housekeeper for this house. And because of her dreams and the way that the house is always calling to her, she takes it up because she wants to know why this house is calling to her. And from there, it just gets crazier. Almost gives a little bit of thriller vibes, but not, because it is definitely like more like magical fantasy realism. I don't even know how I would describe this book or what to put it under because there's so much to it. It's eerie, it's creepy, it's like a mystery, like there's a huge mystery plot to it, a little bit of a romance. Like there's a lot to this book. It was so interesting in the end. I kind of was shocked at the end, but also again, it's one of those books that like the lesson in it kind of sneaks up on you and you're like, wow, that was powerful. So this was definitely a really, really good book for me. I rated this a 5 stars as well. I think about this book a lot. All of these books I think about a lot. I have 2 more to talk about now, number 9 and number 10. So these ones I read the most recent, so you probably have heard me talk about them. I am still going to touch on them. So the next book I would say is in my top 10 this year is Wisteria by Adeline Grace. Now, I have been a fan from the beginning. I absolutely loved Belladonna. Absolutely loved Foxglove, and then this just topped it off. Like, you don't think they can get better, but then they get better. Wisteria was my favorite in the series. I enjoyed this one so much. This one follows a completely different character than the first 2, but I love this character the most, I believe, and the love story in this the most. Again, don't want to give too much away because it is the 3rd in the series, so I don't want to give any spoilers, but you're following a different couple than the first 2, and this couple is definitely more enemies to lovers vibe. I love the like era this is set in. It's kind of again like the Bridgerton era. Ball gowns and balls and parties. It's so much fun, and the main guy in here is he's my favorite. He is so like grumpy but fun and funny. This is more of like this is a YA fantasy with like gothic vibes to it. The other 2 are more gothic than this one. The last book I'm going to talk about, I have talked about already like 3 times, so I'm going to touch it lightly. But my last favorite book I read this year is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. Again, this one really crept up on me. I had to think about it for a long time to realize that I really enjoyed this book. I mean, I knew I enjoyed it at the end of my read. The more I kind of thought about it, the more I enjoyed it, and the more it became a favorite for me this year. So I just thought that this was such a fun world. I won't go into too much detail because I have talked about this book quite a lot, but this was definitely a sneaky little top 10 read for me. So I really enjoyed it. So if you haven't picked this up yet, please do. I know a lot of people are saying it's overhyped, and I'm really easily pleased with books, so maybe this is a little bit overhyped, but I really enjoyed this one. So that is my top 10 for 2024. Again, please let me know what your top 10s were. I am so interested to see what everyone was reading this year. I am so excited for the new year and the new releases and to find fun new reads. It is my favorite part of the new year. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow me for the rest of Bookmas because we are halfway done, and I hope you guys have a happy holidays, and I'll see you next time.
Like and subscribe.